So, for those who don't know too much about Samuel, he is an MYP and DP music teacher at the International School of The Hague, and he's worked in international schools in South Korea and Austria, also Australia before that, and obviously now he's in the Netherlands. And Samuel and I have been connected for quite a while, just mainly through international schooling and music tech things and just conversations. We just got chatting a lot. And also through his kind of prolific writing. I sort of came across his blog and a lot of his work online. And he's definitely a thought leader in the IB music and music tech space. He is the author of the popular book MYP by Concept, which we've just heard a few people have, which is published by Hodder. And as I said, his blog's awesome, and what he puts up on socials and things are also really inspiring. So Samuel's going to lead us through the conversation today with a few questions, a few prompts, and hopefully you've come ready to join in. You've got some ideas, you've got some thoughts that you might want to contribute. So if you do, Samuel will invite you to just unmute and talk, or put your hand up, or whatever you want. Let's get into it, Samuel. Over to you.
Let's get into it. Part of us doing this is, I think this is probably the one time before the craziness of the year with graduation and concerts really takes over, that we can kind of sit back and go, okay, so we've just survived the MCAF forms, and we've just survived putting stuff through for DP. And Chris and I were talking, this is kind of the moment where, in our heads we go, all right, next year we're going to do it different. Next year we're going to do this. And so to strike while the iron is hot, so to speak, we thought, welcome back, Mabera. We thought, if we could bring some people together and sort of create a face-to-face community, what if we could create something for teachers, not necessarily students, because that will filter down to them, but something for teachers that inspires us, gets us creating, gets us sort of mulling over what is possible with this new DP course, makes us happy, builds a community, and ultimately benefits our kids. And that's what we're looking at. So I actually got some questions and things to ask, and feel free to just open your mic, put your hand up. It's we can have some questions and go around that way. So here is kind of what we're looking at today. Welcome to the conversation. We're talking DP music, and what we could do is go through every single component. That's not the point of this afternoon, or this morning, or Chris, late evening. We're actually looking at curating excellent ideas. I'm not saying I have all wonderful ideas, because I know a lot of people are doing much better stuff. We're looking at some curriculum staging. If we're using some technology terms, we're thinking, okay, what should go first? What should go second? What should go third? And then I'm doing this thing called concept-based inquiry. So I've been thinking a lot about scaffolding student learning for success in the IB. And whether that involves MYP and really digging in and focusing there first, and therefore we get a really good cohort for DP. Or in some school scenarios, you only get kids in DP and they have no musical knowledge whatsoever. What do we do? We're still looking at multiple scenarios here. So one of the first questions I want to ask is, what was a good moment for you this year? For you, your students within the new course, something exciting. I don't know, Hugh Jackman rolled up and you did The Music Man in your class together. Like, what was a really cool moment that happened for you this year? Just open your mic and let's go. I mean, it would be cool if Hugh Jackman rolled up. I mean, that'd be nice, but
jump in if no one else is want to go first.
Go for it, man.
All right. We this year we tried something which is in the first year of the course. We did a sort of big focus on music tech quite early on, where it was basically like choose a kind of very short-term project, but it is meant to be about performing with technology. So it wasn't really like the composing focus thing. It was more about trying to find ways to perform. So obviously you'd some of the things you might expect: loop pedals, launch pads, stuff involving more or less use of laptops, those types of things. And we put it all together into something that we called the Music Tech Night, which was actually like a performance, but we decided to close it so that it became a space that was where students were allowed to experiment. So we only invited other high school music students to it, and we kept it as a closed event. We're lucky; our school is well resourced. So what we actually did was that we set everybody up. So it was, if you've seen one of those that famous Snarky Puppy video where everybody's on the headphones, you know, it's like everybody's like has monitor headphones. So we actually set up that so everyone in the audience, it was about 30 or 40 people there. And everybody had headphones. So if you came into that space, it was a black box space with lighting and everything like that. But if you come into the space, you would have heard no music. You just see a bunch of people there. You know, maybe some guitar strings now and then or whatever, something like that. And that was actually really exciting. It was a massive experiment, and there were a couple of technical glitches. We were glad that we hadn't opened it to the public because that made the students feel okay about some of the things that went a little bit sort of all over the place. But in general, like it was a really good thing, and it was a very, it was a short thing, but it really got them thinking about, okay, what can I do with technology? What are some creative things beyond just sampling and composing, which I think is something the students can grapple with and engage with quite instinctively, and they understand that. I think this idea of performing, if you play classical piano, how might you utilize technology in a performance context? That was something that was out of people's comfort zone, and so they were allowed to explore that in a kind of safe space. So that was a great success for us. We're happy we did it early on too, because it generated a lot of ideas. Now that we're kind of doing things on experimenting with music, exploring music, all that stuff, that performance really sort of got them thinking, and it was low stakes because it was early in the year. So yeah, that was a success for us.
Yes. That should be a model for most schools. That's really cool, even if it's a sound trap night. I mean, that could be a really cool thing. Thank you for sharing, man. Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in? Something that's really an incredible moment for you or your students. Yeah, go for it, mate.
So I guess this is more of like a long view of sorts. I really wanted to dig into or introduce students to sampling this year, partly because it's something that I'm not as familiar with, but I have been keen on. So just starting with little sounds that they can record, and then seeing where we can go from there. And honestly, doing it in September, there was not reluctance, but just a little bit of students feeling uneasy. And because I'm learning with them, there was a lot of, it felt uncomfortable at times. But the interesting thing is that sort of like what Ivan said, like having laid those seeds, planted those seeds at the beginning of the year, now we're starting to see it come through in the work they're doing now. And we have set up an arc for the whole year for them to work on this major project that they can keep plugging into, and the different skill sets that they're picking up along the way, they can hopefully modify, and the project can evolve as it goes through the year. And now we're starting to see those sampling techniques come through. And that's been really, really interesting and really cool to see. So maybe not a moment, but the arc of the year.
That's wonderful. That is really cool to hear kids doing sampling. Think of 10 years ago. Think of even 5 years ago in schools. This wouldn't be something you'd hear about. Even with AI that's come up, it's just exploded. Yeah, thank you, Gil. That's really cool. If anyone else is welcome just to jump in, feel free. But if there's no pressure otherwise, okay? So we're just having a discussion and we're sharing different things. Because part of this is, if Ivan or Gyung, if you wanted to sort of maybe jump in again, what did that do for you as the teacher? probably stressed you out a little bit. I get it. But what did it do for you as the teacher when all of a sudden you realized, okay, so with pathways, basically, we connect this, we do this, this works, it sounds great, everyone's sort of nodding along. What did it do for you personally?
I think for me it was something about kind of well, I mean partly part of it was validating just like that you're doing something that works. I mean, I think the new curriculum is you know, it's very open-ended, and there is that's a benefit and also a challenge at the same time. And so I think the big thing is, you know, you're rethinking sort of how you teach things. You know, you can't necessarily structure things in the ways that you would have done in the past. And so this idea of, like, you know, like you were saying, this kind of idea of kind of planting seeds and then seeing those kind of have returns, because I think that there is, and me, I think also that the fact that there was a really practical, authentic music making experience. I think that if everyone here has taken this course to its final step, when it gets to the end, you are just writing a lot of things. I mean, it's really like, it's very hard to get away from just writing, right? So where do those authentic music experiences come in? To me, they really, that first year is really crucial, and really, you know, getting all of those authentic experiences there. And then, you know, you've got enough energy and enthusiasm into it that they can withstand what the last few months of the course is, which is inevitably going to be a lot of compiling of coursework and thinking about wording and AOIs and contexts and all those things that seem a little bit kind of arbitrary, especially early on. So I was glad to have created that, because I think the course itself, the danger is that if you get it wrong, there is none of that. You know, there's nothing that's authentic. Everything is just very academic and very writing focused, and focused on what does the course ask in terms of AOIs and contexts and knowledge and format and all of that. And I think it's finding that balance where you can hit those points, but at the same time, you know, students can be excited about music and express themselves and do all of that. It's not easy. And it was validating to at least have one moment where I felt like that was really happening.
Your fun translated to their ultimate success, in the sense that they got it and they used it and they could move forward. Yeah, I love that. You've led us perfectly to the next question, which would be, if you could stage the curriculum for success. I'm reading this book called Atomic Habits at the moment, where, you know, we all have these goals and everyone wants a 7, really, the students do. We want our kids to be successful, but it's the systems we put in place that actually matter. Because if we have good systems, whether it's backward mapping from PYP, MYP to DP, or in our classroom, it's those systems that actually lead to students being successful. So I'm sort of wondering, in your classrooms, what type of model would you search for? One little example, I don't teach music theory, I teach orchestration. So it's like the practical application. And if it's with technology or on paper or in Sibelius, it kind of doesn't matter which component or AOI we're talking about. The orchestration just continues for the whole 2 years, and I can build knowledge and skills the whole way. That's just one little example. What type of model would you like to do? What would you search for? I'm happy to share more if someone just goes.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to jump in again. I just
go for it, man.
Taking a lot of space. I like, one of the things that we do. So the way that we have kind of designed the course is that in the 2 years, the second year of the course is really very much based around the coursework. So we sort of introduced the coursework right at the end of the first year, in the sense of like them actually doing it.
Like the,
and then
like the exploration and experimentation and presentation.
So it all starts at that point. Essentially, after 1 year, they just work on coursework for the second year. So in the first year, I think, like, in terms of we sort of teach, what we've done is that we teach music from different places around the world through the sort of like something that's scaffolded a bit like the creating exercise and the performed adaptation. So we use those as kind of tools to teach about music. We were like, when the course first came, we were like, okay, we do want to teach. This is like a course that sort of lends itself to like a lot of sort of student autonomy, but sometimes that can, I think no guidance is not good teaching. And I think that it's like hard to kind of know where you want to balance that. So we've kind of tried to teach that through the performed adaptation and the creating exercise. Then we have a composing, the first composition that they do, it's sort of set by us as a task. And we have some, we call it music in conflict, and we study a bunch of pieces that sort of deal with trying to say something quite political, or you know, something like, if it's like to do with climate change or anything like that. We study a bunch of pieces like that, look at tools they use, take apart those kind of more the compositional tools. So we look at, you know, like elements of perhaps repetition or sampling or you know, like use of references to musical cultures, you know, even sometimes a bit superficial, but you know, it's tools and things that you can use. And then the students compose a piece of music that is around an area that they care about. And then we teach analysis, and we actually do that for quite some time. So we actually because we feel that so it's not music theory, but it is music analysis. So it's, you know, we're not teaching your intervals and what have you, but we do teach, like, you know, how to look at a melody, how to look at harmonic progression, how to understand different types of harmony, weight, push and pull, tension release, and those types of things. And that is something that we kind of dig into quite a lot, because what we find is that gives them quite a lot of tools in terms of navigating some of that written work. If they feel like they're supported to do that, I think they can also free up a little bit more in terms of being creative with the music making. If you feel like you have a toolbox that's going to get you through the coursework, then you allow yourself also to be creative and have fun with it, I guess. So that once that is done, we then the only component that we really sort of teach quite in detail. This is the first year we did this, by the way. We didn't do this in the past, but we thought, okay, we're going to try this. Experimenting with music, we taught it as a sort of 3-week, almost like a course on the component.
Yeah, like a module within the course itself.
Yeah, so it was almost like we did this mini experiment, like where all 3 groups of students, 3 or 4 in each group, did an experiment that we kind of assigned, and then they did a quick write-up, imagining it was the first experiment. And it was just really just about the formatting, the AOIs, and the context, and all these things. But again, I think it was more, it didn't feel like the most like kind of deep teaching in terms of like musical content or, you know, value in that sense. But by sacrificing the 3 weeks to kind of go, this is what you need to do, then we feel like now, when they've now started on their kind of experimenting journey, they're not held back by being so focused on what is it again, like what is it, and you know, it's not helpful that they chose to have exploring and experimenting, which forever are getting confused, at least with my students. I don't know if anyone else is having this, but just because the words are so similar. So I think that was one thing that we chose to do this time. We'll see how it goes. That's that year group is still working on, but yeah. So and then basically hit the second year. It's just scheduled, and actually what we have is that we have a very intense list of deadlines. Again, just to provide scaffold for the students so that they kind of feel like it's not just go get on with it kind of thing, that it is here as like a list that is almost every couple of weeks there's a mini here. This is where your performed adaptation is due. This is where your first experiment in creating is due. This is where the first write-up of this is due. And it seems very intense, but because there's essentially not a lot of like teaching, like in the traditional way that happens during that, it's all kind of coaching and individual conversations and so on. We have found that having scaffold, having planning helps, especially the students that perhaps have that innate kind of ability to organize themselves so well. They feel a little bit clearer about, okay, what are the steps I have to do? So that's the second.
I love the organization in that. We have the similar thing with the deadlines. They start to come thick and fast in the second year, and I find it a bit overwhelming myself as the teacher. But you're right; it's organization is a huge factor, because you can be very creative and you can have a lot of really good performances. But even the performances, you have to organize prior so that they have time to practice and prepare them. Yeah, organization's huge. I'm conscious that I don't want to pressure anyone, but if Eleanor or Mabera or Felipe, hello Felipe, if anyone else would like to jump in and say something, please do.
I mean, we did, I think, some things quite similar with our one. I think talking about the experimenting, we very much structured that one because it was so different, I think, from what they had, anything that they'd done previously. We essentially almost gave them a trial project of something that was very far out of their comfort zone. So I did, for example, klezmer with them, and we almost did a mini, say I think it was about 3 weeks one as well, like of how you might structure a very small one, much more scaffolded than they would have in their final one, but essentially taking them through that process of what it might look like. And I know that we've done that for both the 2 years, like the one that was assessed last year and the one that's being assessed this year. And I think both years they seem to have been a lot more confident when tackling their own ones as a result from that. I think we've looked more over the past couple of years. We've structured, I think, a few more of the units, so the presenting and the exploring, more heavily in the first year, with the experimenting and the contemporary music maker being placed more in the second year. So that's the idea with the one that we had, was that for those of them that have done GCSE or a similar level of courses, the presenting is most similar to what they've come from, but also gave them a really good option for, I suppose, linking to what you were saying previously about being able to build on skills that they're already familiar with, but taking them to that next level while still getting them used to self-directing their own project. Because I know for us, I think that's something that we've been trying to shuffle down a bit into our lower school as well. The idea of them being so responsible for their own projects and designing them themselves, and not just being told, you will write a piece in this style to do this, was just, I think that in itself was really hard for them to grasp. And so that was something we were trying to build in, essentially like build in at the start of that time with a lot of scaffolds, but also in ways that were familiar to what they did know. Because I think we found very much in the first year that the students came in expecting it to be like GCSE. And it did take them a good month to get their head around the fact that actually it was not like that. And so like our curriculum modeling had to take that into account, that we had to build up their confidence. I think their confidence to trust their own judgments. Because I think that was very much a thing that I found with ours. It was, in a sense, almost too free for them at the beginning of it, that they didn't trust that what they were doing was right, because they weren't used to being such an important part of the conversation.
Or used to being, I hate to say this, creative.
That too.
Or experimental. Yeah. I didn't consider that aspect of the GCSE, because I think now of the components and, the instructions, you have to do this, Eleanor, and then the kid has to do this, then has to do this. I can kind of see that thinking. Yeah. And you overcame that through modeling what you want the students to do, like the klezmer example.
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of that. So for particularly for the projects where it was much more unusual. So I think the experimenting is a good example, but also to a certain extent the performance adaptation as well, and definitely the contemporary music maker. Like the contemporary music maker, actually, I think is one of the main examples for us. We actually, before we let them loose on doing their final one, we very much structured and built up that project through a lot of mini ones, but still with authentic performances at the end of it, still building up that level of collaboration, so that by the time they actually completed their final project, they had already done several collaborative performances or compositions or creative projects where they designed and they'd created those sort of ideas, but on almost like a no fail way. It took away that pressure. And we would also so the first time, for example, we were like, well, okay, you're going to design your own you're going to get used to designing your timeline, to writing your brief, to things like that. But without but back in year 12, without the collaborative aspect of it. So they were just doing it themselves. So they just knew what that situation would be. And they had to do their own multimedia presentation at the end of it, but it was a 3-minute presentation rather than a 15. And then the next time we added in a certain element of collaboration, but maybe not to the extent that we would expect the final one to be. And we also added in a performance aspect at the end of it. And then by the time it got to year 13, they were sort of really familiar with what the contemporary music maker required, in a way that when we first started talking about it, I think they were a bit overwhelmed.
I love hearing this. Like, it's a Wednesday afternoon for me. I've had a long day of teaching. I had my seniors today, and I come here and I'm hearing these amazing ideas and going, yeah, that's exactly what this is for. This is really cool. I don't mean to just move through things because I'm just conscious of time, but thank you people for sharing. This is making me even reflect on my own teaching experience and going, I need to do that better. What I'll jump to is the last question, because you've all touched on this really well. Scaffolding skills and understanding. So analysis, Ivan was talking about. Gillian was talking about when bringing in sampling and learning with the kids. And Eleanor, you're talking about almost actually scaffolding the entire component and breaking the component down into smaller chunks so they're manageable. And I even thought the better part about that is if you video each little chunk, the student then has massive amounts of video to include in the CMM. So it's not just a PowerPoint that they're talking over. That's really powerful. What would everyone here do if you were given, here are 3 steps? What would you do first and third to scaffold students' learning and understandings? Because for me, I approach it pretty much the same way as everyone here. Time being my enemy. And as teachers, you know this. And if you're a parent, you have to then go home and also be a parent. What would be the first, second, third thing? So for me, I look at things like Ivan was talking analysis, I call it orchestration. So I go, okay, so whatever piece it is, we need to be able to deconstruct it. So it's like analysis for me is important, because second, then we need to play it. And third, we need to somehow reassemble. So kind of the same thing. I'm going to leave the components and the writing at the end, but what is needed as a skill or an understanding that would scaffold their understanding or their need to know how to operate a piece of technology, or their need of how to use a loop pedal with the guitar. Because that's the problem I'm facing right now with a guitarist who loves Ed Sheeran, and I'm trying to get him to use a loop pedal, sort of perform live. If anyone wants to jump in, it's okay. We'll bear up.
Yeah, I can jump for that. Yeah. So what I usually like in teaching the MYP, I'm not teaching DP, but it's preparing the kids that they have the skills, that they can have an interest, and then decide that they want to study DP. So they have the opportunity to discover if they want to do it or not. So when I start with MYP1, I realized that the kids are really good in self-learning. So they're just putting their headphones on, they're going to the keyboard, and then they just watch some YouTube videos, they find out how to play a song that they're interested. So to make connections, I would say that would be something that I would start with, like to make
connections.
Yes, making connections to their interest, to their knowledge, and to everything that they are like seeing around. So as we are living in a country that's like a desert, no, it's not, it's a desert. We have great artists like Olafur Eliasson has installation in this country. So why not going to the desert and record some sounds and then sample it? So I would say that's something that I'm like really interested to do, like to have the kids on the field doing some recordings, having the tools, and then going to the studio and say, hey, what can we do with this? So that's why I'm really happy to have like Soundtrap, or Logic is coming now on the iPad. So it's really nice to hear that. So,
yeah, I'm really excited about that too. I have to tell you though, I just be a little bit careful because it's subscription based. So I'm hoping, like super fingers crossed, that for education or schools, there will be the opportunity through your school system to have that as a school body or for education. But at the moment, yes, it's subscription based.
I agree. At least we can build up a studio where the kids just can go in. And in future, I see the AI is coming up, like it's getting really fast. I feel lost sometimes, but I just tried ChatGPT. So in the writing part, I would say everyone is going to change their, citation skills and everything. Like the IB, I think, accepted as well. So if you use ChatGPT or the other AIs as well. So
and it does your citations for you as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So when you say scaffolding, every year is different. Last year was totally different. Next year is going to be different. So to be open-minded and to be reflective for any changes and to see the needs of the kids.
Well, small spoiler alert. I know, Ivan, you had something prepared, so you're next. But spoiler alert, what I'm trying to do with Chris as a part of this is put together a course for teachers, not necessarily students, and not necessarily this is the guide, do the guide, not like that, but more of how can we educators find things, enrich our practice and association that then enriches our classrooms. So even something like AI, you can use AI to prompt a composition prompt. It can do your citations for you. But something that has occurred to me as an examiner is some of the AI now, within Logic itself, you can grab something from Spotify and say, mix my music to sound like this track from Spotify. And it just does it. So every student submission could literally sound like a professional work with almost zero effort. How many examiners would be aware of that? Or how many teachers would be aware of that? So it's getting really, really fast now. So it's kind of bypassing the analysis and the vocabulary, the need for these certain skills. And we as teachers, we need to understand exactly what's going on. So I'm completely with you. Yeah, it's a little scary, but it's fun. Ivan, was there something you wanted to say about for the scaffolding?
Yeah, I think I think for the top three things. I mean, actually, we mentioned already the fact that I think probably teaching analysis for the courses is something that is essential. I mean, interesting to see like that whole AI conversation is a whole other thing. I have been desperately trying to get any of these large language models to analyze music accurately, and it's pretty superficial so far. So I think we're still in the clear as far as the skill set is concerned, but it's probably coming quite fast. But interestingly, I mean, the new course is kind of written in such a way that it would be quite hard for AI to sort of, I mean, do anything beyond the kind of a superficial support of factual information. And if it can analyze a Mozart symphony to some detail because of just the amount of information that's out there already. But if you're wanting to do something a bit more obscure, you're going to struggle. Anyway, back to what I was going to say. So analysis number one. There's two kind of they're musical skills in a sense, but they're also not, that I think are really important. One of them is the skill of record keeping, in a sense. So it's like this idea of, you know, like being able to store everything in a place. I think it's almost like an organization thing, but it is record keeping. Like the idea, I mean, the contemporary music maker is like that. The idea of taking photos continuously, screenshots continuously, you know, recording conversations that you're doing. Like that habit is something that doesn't come naturally to all students. And I think so that, you know, this idea of the journal, I mean, like, I don't know how many people are actually using the journal idea in the way that it's kind of prescribed in the course. I know that we take some pretty major liberties in terms of how we do that. But so I think that skill set is one. The other one that I think is an interesting one is because the course is so big, but also just in general as a musician, I think pace is something that students struggle with, because it's like the idea that, you know, you have to be quite decisive. And I think, you know, this myth of like musicians sitting around and getting inspiration and things flowing out, you know, I mean, this is one of these big misconceptions that students have. You just got to sit down and do work, and you got to generate work, even if it's crap. Like you got to just keep making things.
Play the game
until you have, So if you make, you know, 16 bars of music and you have one bar that you're keeping, that's better than just sitting around and thinking and getting that one bar after a while. So I think that for composing, for experimenting, for all these things like that, just that amount of energy that you have to put in, and like the productivity that you have to have. I think a lot of students that choose to do music, they kind of choose it. They have that sort of the romantic perception, like dreaming away and, you know, something coming out of that. And that is, to me, because the course is so kind of big in terms of what it asks students to do, such a vast amount of work, then they have to from day one be just super productive. And so I'm trying to sort of teach them that, but that's a hard thing to teach, because that's a really hard to define skill set anyway. And so it's a challenging one. But I'd say that analysis, record keeping, and then pace, you know, like the being decisive, I think is probably my top three.
Decisive, record keeping. Yeah, I call it documentation. I was just putting some stuff in the chat there. Yes. People sort of agree with this, that this is kind of how they see the year in retrospect, and they're going, oh yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. Felipe, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in actually, because back to this, I don't teach the current DP curriculum. I used to teach it a few years ago, so I haven't taught the new one. But we did open a A-level music technology course, and which is going through the first year, which is the AS. And just a little resource for any teachers looking for any kind of scaffolding or breaking down of music tech stuff. The syllabus is really, really detailed. You know, you have like anything to do with dynamic processing, stereo panning, EQ. If you're looking for things to like get grades for, the A-level music tech stuff is really prescriptive. It's completely the opposite from DP and the IBDP mentality in general. But you know, it's just you're looking at the AS syllabus, and you have plenty of things to teach in terms of tech, of music tech. And what else was I going to say?
Felipe, do you mind if I just ask a question of you? I put I bypassed this slide because we were talking about technology earlier. Sure. But one thing I'm noticing when I look at student responses is you were just saying things like panning and EQ and sort of vocabulary words that have an action that you can both hear and manipulate with music technology. Do you teach that explicitly with your kids, so that
totally,
and then you teach that explicitly? Wonderful. And how do you approach that? What is it? What's something you do?
We find we do a lot of journal keeping, doing like listening to. They split the course into recording eras. So you start with like tape recording and how it moves along to digital recording and the DAW. So we have a big thick listening journal, and he's listening to pieces from the 60s and compare them to something from the 70s, but only in the production and the recording techniques. So
Okay.
they have to start thinking analytically about how that performance was captured, to the point of like what possible mics were used in that capturing of that performance. So it's quite technical, but I'm thinking there's a lot of crossover between the current DP, as I understand it, because I haven't taught it, so I don't really know. I hear these things like contemporary music maker and experimenting with music, and this is kind of like all things that I do, but not really explicitly. All we do is like head-on DAW work and editing and chopping and sampling and recording things. It's fun, but it's really demanding. I find it. But yeah, that was why the main reason why I came to this conversation, was to see if I could pick anything from the DP course that I could weave into the A-level music tech.
That is, a lot of people have mentioned this CMM, the contemporary music maker. I put it in the chat just in case anyone has to go. I made an example one this year with the saxophone quartet, and I'll blog about it and I'll share the score for your kids, so you have access to that. It was like a drama skit, but what you were saying there, those ideas of, you know, chopping and editing, and I had a Logic backing track, and we used IBDP, the electronic saxophones. So I had to think of plugins and cables and power and all sorts of things. That is almost implied as students need to work this out in order to make these projects happen. Because in the real world, you'll have a tech team, and you'll have the mix board, and you'll have the composer and the director, but the students have to work out what chord goes into where just to get off the ground. And that's kind of what I'm hearing with other colleagues. It's okay, so what skills and techniques can I now bring into this for students to be successful in experimenting or the CMM? So I'm just looking at this because I really want to open it for questions. But if I go to this slide here, if that's okay with everyone, just to quickly discuss something about technology then, because thank you for coming. And I thought, as a part of this, just to give you some gifts to say thank you. And at the end of today, this slideshow and the links and everything will sent to you as a PDF with your permission through email. But I have some links here, and there's a YouTube playlist at the very beginning, which has some of those technology. There's a performance by a student, which they redid every single loop from the TVA theme from the Loki Disney Plus series. And they did such a good job that I got a copyright strike from YouTube when I uploaded it, because they said, "You've just uploaded the original track." And I went, "No, I didn't." And they performed it live with a launch pad and a Moog and all sorts of things. And then on the right in pink, I've got a link here to something called Arcade. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but essentially you grab a little keyboard like I have here in front of me. So I've got these, I've been experimenting with these Lumi keys. I don't know if you've heard about this. If I go back to one of my slides, I can show you this little thing here. It's called a Lumi key, and they're Bluetooth. But there's something unique about them. Have you ever seen a guitarist play piano, and when they hold a key, they move their finger as if to do vibrato? Yeah, now that works. So if you press harder or lift up or roll your finger, it actually translates into MIDI data so that you get a filter effect, or you get a vibrato on a string instrument. So I thought, okay, how could that be used? So I went to this thing called Arcade, and what they've done is they've chopped up sounds, which are all copyright royalty free, and you can perform them. It's amazing. So if you click that link, I think you get a month free, and you can sort of experiment with it yourself as a teacher and just go, okay, what is this thing? How does this work? And they've done things like chop up Handel's Messiah onto the keys, and that's already pre-sampled, and then you can change the effects and perform and record in Logic or Ableton. It's mind-blowing what is possible now. Lumi keys, again, if you're interested, it's called MPE, which is a new type of performance protocol where you can, roll your finger and do stuff like that. But they have these things, these little blocks. I don't know if people have seen these before. They're little magnets on them. And essentially you connect them to the keyboard. and they'll control Logic or Ableton or GarageBand. So what you could do is play the keys, and the little buttons will appear on here, and those little buttons will say next track, next marker, stop, start. So you could actually control your CMM without having to touch your laptop. And because Bluetooth, no wires. So I've been trying to find how to deal with the cable problem. And there's a whole bunch of other inspiration things there if you're interested for your own journey and for your own listening. Because I like that idea. I haven't shared this, but I've got a spreadsheet where I've been listening to tracks and sort of documenting, doing my own analysis, just like a diary. I suppose that's actually a really cool idea, Ivan, as well. I like that. It's creating like a listening or a Spotify or Apple Music diary, but there's already categories where they sort of analyze the tracks. That'd be pretty cool too. So we've got some question time. If you'd like, you can ask any question. We can talk DP. How do you feel this information sort of chat session went for you? It's okay. It's Wednesday evening for me.
It's not really a question, but I just wanted to say thank you very much. Like, it has been really helpful to like be able to talk about it with other people. So, breaking the silence.
I don't want to steal from Chris's thunder if he's over here on my right, my left. That's the purpose, to bring people together and sort of discuss in a personable way, rather than through like an Instagram post or something. Because I don't know how you guys feel, but I do kind of feel a little bit isolated from the education world of teachers. I have 2 colleagues, which was better than when I had 1, or I was the only person in the music department. So if we can connect people and have these one-to-one or group calls, we learn so much. Yeah, Gyung or Mubera or Felipe, do you have any sort of questions about the course that we can sort of help each other with?
I would like to ask, like if you start a recording studio, do you have like a list that you can say this is a must that we have, that you are using in your classroom? Like, what is something that you would say you have?
That's an amazing question.
Oh, I have plenty.
yeah, that's what I'm sitting here going, we could be here for hours.
It's a lot of little things, but I can give you my email and I can send you like my purchase requests. Or I'm just typing my email on the chat.
You could go so crazy with that. One of the things, one of the things I would probably say first is teacher does the project first. So if you can find, like, just me trying to work out how to work with MIDI Bluetooth, okay? So just does this work? So today I passed this around my year 12 class and they had to we're doing synthesis. So they had to try and perform while the other student changed the parameters. So pick something that you can learn, even if it's a little bit, and then slowly start to add on to that. Because I've never had the good fortune of being in a school with a wonderful recording studio yet. So what I tend to do is build little mini ones, like a little module where we have a computer, some sort of keyboard or Ableton push or something. And then I start to add a guitar pedal for some effects, or I start to add a really nice audio interface and just slowly start to build onto things. And as I do that, like what Gyung was saying before, when he does it with the kids, because they learn with you, it's almost as if the lesson writes itself. You've got your own AI with you. The kids sort of go, oh, that works. And then they sort of build on with that. Most schools can't really afford a huge setup. So when I've worked with a school, I sort of go to software. I go to a few pieces of hardware And now you could get like a Juno 6, which is a really expensive. If you have one, you're really rich. Just find one in the garage, and if they're there, you're very lucky. There's companies like Arturia that have plugins, so it opens up on your screen, and all you need is the little keyboard, and you can emulate the exact sounds that you wanted. Another company called Native Instruments, Arturia, and I put Project Sam, no relation. I put Project Sam into the links before. Yeah. Those companies are online, and what they do is they provide plugins and software that you can just trigger with a keyboard. And that's a really good starting place, because then the kids can build up the vocabulary, the knowledge. And then what Felipe is saying, something like a Korg vocal, or even like, it's got stuff plugged in, even just a guitar pedal or something adds another effect. And then what you do is you chain it together, almost like we were talking before, scaffolding the learning. Before you know it, I mean, you run out of desk space, and you need more power cables and power boards, and never underestimate the power of a USB hub.
Yeah, that's
never. Yeah, don't get 2 USB hub. Get like a 7 USB hub. Get like something that will take as many devices as you can, because before you know it, you need to plug in a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Samuel, maybe we should leave it there. We could probably keep going forever. So many good ideas. If anyone has more questions, email address will be included with the PDF of the slides and the links that Samuel's kindly sharing, which is awesome. Should we give Samuel a virtual round of applause for hosting the session? Yay.
No, it's okay.
No, it was really cool. Thank you so much. And thanks again to everyone for joining us. And hope you have a great rest of the week. And let's stay in touch. Hopefully we'll do something like this again soon.
Yeah, stay in touch, everyone. Ask questions and connect. If you go to MTIIS, there's a whole bunch of things happening and courses and things, especially with the Smithsonian. Do you mind if I quickly drop that in?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I don't know if you saw, we've got 2 main ones just very quickly. You can obviously leave if you don't want the pitch, but World Music Pedagogy, which is a fantastic deconstruction of the concept of world music, and it sort of reconstructs it as a whole new pedagogy and way of approaching music. Brilliant stuff with Dr. Jennifer Walden. And then Musical Futures International, if you're looking for informal learning, band-based stuff. That's coming to Kuala Lumpur if you're anywhere near, and that's brilliant. Fantastic stuff. Keep an eye out.
Thank you, guys.
Cool.
Thank you,
everybody.
You all again.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks everybody.
Samuel.
Bye.
Thanks, Samuel. Thanks, Chris. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye, guys.